Thanks to Squarespace for making this video possible. It's an all-in-one platform for building a beautiful website. It's got great analytics and it's just really easy to use. So thanks for sponsoring this video, making it possible. Welcome to First Fill. I'm Phil and I'm going to fill you in about whiskey. So today we're talking about old peaty whiskey versus young peaty smoky whiskey. And some of you might have heard about the fact that old peaty whiskey can, not be as smoky as it gets older. So we're going to test that today. We're going to test it, and we've got the Laphroaig 10, a bottle most people can find everywhere. You've probably might have tried it. It's in a lot of bars, it's in a lot of bottle shops. But we've got a bottle you probably haven't tried, and that's a Laphroaig 28. And this is going to be an interesting test. And I've also got Henwood here, so got him back on the show. He's brought some more whiskey, and it's going to be an interesting comparison.
When you message me, it's like, hey, do you want to do another review? And I'm like, drinking whiskey, why not? Look, Laphroaig is probably one of the most iconic whiskies out there. Everyone knows it. You hear the old adage, once you get into whiskey, you'll get into peaty whiskey, which is quite a bit of a weird one. I think it sounds a little bit elitist for some people to say that. Yeah. Because some people just freaking hate peated whiskey.
Yeah, they do.
Right?
Yeah, throughout the whole, even people who've been drinking it for a long time just come around.
We'll never get into it. I think it's an acquired taste, but in saying that, just like coffee, if you're not a coffee drinker, some people just are repulsed by coffee. And this is a very similar thing.
Well, let's talk about the presentation between the two. So, your normal Laphroaig, you get it in a tin box. It's pretty general, you probably know the bottle. And then look how far, how all out they've gone for this Laphroaig 28.
Such ridiculous packaging. The box itself is probably $100. I mean, and what I love about it, it's got a little magnet latch on the bottom, so your bottle is secure. God forbid that falls out, which is actually fair enough. The Laphroaig 28 is a combination of bourbon and sherry cask. From memory, it is bourbon quarter cask or sherry. Yeah, one of the quarter casks, which are smaller casks. It's bottled at 44.4. So that's another interesting thing because it's 28 years old, bottled higher than a 10-year-old. Usually the younger whiskies will be bottled higher, but it's not. So it's actually a bit of an interesting difference.
Because of the angel share. So as I've talked about a couple of times with the angel share, the alcohol, especially in cold countries, is the first thing. It evaporates before the water does. So therefore, old whiskies, generally that's whiskey alcohol percentage, ABV is going to be falling every year. Yeah. And so, it shows you how much Laphroaig have added water to it once they've already taken it out of the cask.
Yeah, so. I mean, the interesting thing about that as well, and this is where the trigger warning comes, if any, Beams and Tour guys are watching this, don't troll me, but it's also designed for volume. So the Laphroaig 10 is, a lot of people put ice with it, cocktails, peated whiskey rinses for cocktails, and when they just put a bit of whiskey on the lip to get that little taste. Yeah. So 40% is designed for volume, and when you get to the 28, 44.4% is an odd number. It really is. I don't know where it's coming from, but 44.4, I don't know where that number comes from, but they do need to put a little bit more ABV to really give that complexity. Because if you have a very young, old whiskey, and then you put the ABV too low, it's a bit of a missed opportunity because then you're cutting the complexity too much. Yeah. And that's something to do with the peat and what the peat does over time as well. So with that in mind, I reckon we should start nosing these two.
Yeah, it sounds great.
All right?
Let's start nosing them. So what have you got on the left and what have we got on the right?
Laphroaig 10.
10.
28.
28. Cheers. Cheers.
All right, there you go. So Laphroaig, one of the most distinctly flavored whiskey. I mean, iodine, kelp, seaside salt.
Burning hospital.
Burning tires, like in a Mad Max kind of situation.
Band-aids. And then that typical just peat, that earthiness.
Like the medicinal herbal, almost like a Jägermeister a little bit, but watered down a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little interesting story, I'm not sure if you've read about this before. So during the Prohibition in America, everything was actually illegal, but Laphroaig was legal to be imported. but
okay.
they sold them in pharmacies because
Oh, right.
the American authorities thought, what kind of a sick person would voluntarily drink it? So they thought...
I've had people say that to me when I give it to them. They're like, why would you drink this?
Yeah, totally. And so
good.
they didn't think that anyone would drink it out of like pleasure. And so they thought it was actually a pharmaceutical product. They can smell it. Like I said, burning hospital.
Burning hospital. You got the flames and you've got the medicinal aspect.
Before we taste it, nose the other one as well.
Yeah.
And you'll notice.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning to you before we started. It's going to really just boggle the mind.
It's almost like it's so much more fruity.
And then do you notice that you're not really getting that sharp burnt rubber, burnt bandage medicinal so much?
Nah.
In fact, when I first tried the Laphroaig 28, I thought to myself, this can't be a Laphroaig.
If you gave me this blind, I would not pick this as a Laphroaig.
Every single person that are tasting said, this can't be a Laphroaig. Like, there's no Laphroaig signature. Like, literally, there is no Laphroaig signature. All I'm getting is, like you said, fruit, jam. I'm getting a little minerality. Once you let it evaporate a little bit, you do get a little bit of
I'm getting a little bit
smoke.
of I'm getting the smoke now.
That's
When
it.
my first smell, I was just like, especially after coming off the tin, I was just like, where's the smoke?
Yeah, it's like a space idol. That's bizarre, isn't it?
It's really bizarre. It just, it doesn't seem to be like a Laphroaig.
So the reason for this is that when they dry the malt in the kiln and they use heavy amounts of peat and then they put it in a barrel, the peat actually breaks down over time. So the peat phenols, over time, it breaks down and it becomes, just like wine, it becomes tertiary flavors. Okay,
Right.
so you've got your primary, secondary flavors, which most young whiskies will have. When you get older whiskey, it starts to, like last time we talked about it with the Glengarry, it starts to develop tertiary flavors. But with peat, the tertiary flavors is just insane. Like I haven't had many old peated whiskies before.
No.
But it is just absolutely insane, like absolutely insane.
And that's what's interesting as well, and it does make you think, why haven't I not had older ones of this as much? You know, because generally the older ones I probably have had have been, you know, I'm not talking that old, I'm talking like 18-year-olds, have generally been the Speyside whiskies, they're the Campbelltown whiskies, they're the Island whiskies, but generally not so much your big classic, you know, even ones like Talisker and that sort of thing. And it's interesting because, I mean, it's almost like the signature is a little bit, it doesn't really smell like Laphroaig. Like blind, I wouldn't pick it up.
And that really essentially answers your question. So when people drink peated whiskey, they want peated whiskey. Yeah. Right? And so the younger the peated whiskey, the more robust the peat flavors are. And the convenient thing about that commercially as well is that when you've got a young peated whiskey, the peat is so prominent that it masks new make spirit. And so you can release an 8 to 12-year-old peated whiskey and it sips beautifully because the peat adds a dimension of flavor that hides new make sharpness and new make fruitiness, which is not entirely bad, but it hides that. And when you have an older peated whiskey, that flavor profile dies. It goes away and becomes something else. And a lot of people actually who are very much into peated whiskey, they don't like old peated whiskey because there's no peat. Yeah, right. Like we just smelt it now. Like I can tell you right now, like I said, if I gave this to you, you wouldn't think there's peat. And that's basically the answer there. It's commercially and palate-wise, people want peated whiskey because it's peated, and the older it is, the less peated it tastes. Yeah. So I reckon we sip the 28 first. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right.
Cheers. I just want to quickly say thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I've been using Squarespace for over 5 years. They're absolutely fantastic. And there's quite a few reasons for that. The first one, you can get your own domain when you set up a website. Secondly, the websites are beautiful, easy to navigate. It just looks good. You don't need to have a design background. Back in the day, I used to use Dreamweaver and tried to dabble with the code. I was just all too confused and I just gave up. Squarespace is easy as setting up a social media page. Thirdly, you can set up an online store. I actually do this myself. I sell prints online where people buy prints. And some of you might know that they actually have an Instagram account just for landscape photography. It's like another side hobby of mine. And I have a website where people can buy these landscape photos. And I've had people who have bought these photos and put them on like one whole wall of their office somewhere around the world somewhere. So go to the link www.squarespace.com/firstfill whiskey to get 10% off when you sign up with Squarespace. And you can share this link with people as well. They can use it too. So share the link. I highly recommend it. And thanks again, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video. Back to the show. Wow.
What do you think?
I don't know. That's really interesting.
It's bizarre,
It's
isn't
almost
it?
like, I'd love to have almost a sherry whiskey here with it, because I'm getting this weird, almost perfumey kind of thing.
Like a strange floral.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a strange perfume. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's just in comparison with the 10 that I'm suddenly just picking up all these really different things.
Well, when you drink the 10, you're probably going to dry retch comparing to it because it's so strong.
Yeah.
No, because it's unpleasant. It's not like that. It's just because it's so polar opposite. Like, I mean, I'm getting a bit of that burnt rubber, but very faint. I'm getting more, and I know this sounds like, these descriptions sound weird, but I'm getting more like a dirty mud.
It's like a familiar,
like old paper.
Yeah. I feel like there's an old car of Saturn or something. I don't know what that is. Maybe like the leather and, I don't know, something about the smell of the dashboard and stuff.
I know exactly what you're saying, and it's got like that, but it's an old stale kind of. I associate it with like old paper, an old car, old leather. It's got a bitterness, like a grapefruit pith bitterness, grapefruit marmalade maybe, like an aftertaste that's a bit bitter in a pleasant way.
Like the dried flowers that people have, sometimes they have it like in their house or whatever, and it's just gone brown.
Organic matter, earthiness, leafy, like, you know, being in the bush just after it's been raining, and you get a little bit of that organic matter. And I mean, what I put that down to is the tertiary flavor developing from the broken down peat matter, which is the phenols of the peat breaking down and becoming something different. Try the other one. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know your thoughts, because the difference.
Oh,
I mean,
the smell. Going back now, I'm getting like the bleach you clean a toilet with.
It's so sharp, eh? It's so sharp.
Wow, that is watery,
but
really minerally.
Watery, minerally, but man, the peat is just so forward. So forward.
Yeah, it's almost like coming back to this. It's like just the smoke, but then everything else is just sort of kind of just disappears. Like there's nothing really else sort of behind this.
Yes, 40%. What you're getting is very watered down, and so literally you're not getting as much flavor per sip as you would if it was cask strength. And that's what you're getting. The peat will always be forward with young whiskies, but then the complexity is just gone because afterwards it's gone. But in saying that, most people would drink and go, it's a very complex whiskey, because it is, because the peat is so heavy and the mineral, the iodine, everything is so heavy. The saline nature of it is so heavy. But really, if they had it another 6%, I think the Laphroaig 10 would be exceptional.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same about that. Laphroaig was one of the whiskies that got me into whiskey. When I first got into it, I found the spirity, the thing that was almost putting me off. And when I went to Laphroaig, because I was already into Marmite and Guinness and Stout and stuff, and I really liked it. But these days when I have it, lots of peat and smoke, but then behind it, there's not as much.
Not much interest factor, eh?
Yeah.
But then have you sipped it? Have you sipped the 28 after you've gone back?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's crazy about it, is that these two are the same spirit.
It's crazy. It's so interesting to see what happens with age, to think this has come from, you know, the same distillery. What happens to a Laphroaig when you pull back that piece and it starts to, as you're saying, it tampers off over those years, how much it just turns into a different whiskey.
That's right.
Whereas other whiskies, you know, you have a Glenfarclas 10 and a Glenfarclas 21. They're still generally, you kind of get
very similar.
Like it's going to be still Glenfarclas. One's just going to be a little bit more nuanced and subtle, and the other's going to be a bit more spirity. Yeah. But here it just feels like two different whiskies.
Two different whiskies. And I mean, like you say, you know, like the same with Glendronach. You have the Glendronach 15, Glendronach 18, and the 21. A very similar experience. I mean, yeah, sure, the 21 is going to have a better mouthfeel, I find, but the 18, I think, is the optimal value zone, actually, not the 21. The 18 Glendronach is fantastic. But you can tell they're all very similar spirits, but these two, chalk and cheese.
I mean, the other thing about these two bottles, they're very, very different prices. and this one's also much more available.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got this for about, I think it's about $69 New Zealand. Might be even less or something.
Hell of a value. I mean, this one here, last time I checked, is average of about £600.
Right.
This one here is a lot heftier in price. I mean, the box alone is $1,000. So, you know, yeah. I mean, I mean, look at the accents. The copper. There's a copper strap that's around. I mean, the copper. I'm speechless when I see bottles like this.
And that's the thing as well. This is not even independent bottling. This is from the distillery.
That's right.
And so they've gone all out on this bottle. Whereas, say, and again, Glenfarclas, you can buy a 30-year-old quite at a lot of places, and it's just a normal bottle.
Yeah.
And maybe that says something about Laphroaig and old peaty whiskies, old peaty whiskies from Islay especially, maybe it is quite a special thing when people are seeking it out and they're willing to pay a bit more for it.
It's got to be. I mean, 28 years in a barrel. Look, that's essentially 3 decades.
It's a long time, yeah.
You got to have to make it special, and also a company like Laphroaig, who's owned by Beam Suntory, they will never ever spend money on something that does not get a good return. So by creating a box like this, the experience is enhanced.
Yeah.
And so they'll be able to charge more than if they didn't make a box like that. So that's being a little bit cynical about,
that's true.
But it's also the truth.
It's a statement piece as well. Like,
it's a statement piece, that's it.
I mean, put it. If you have that sitting in your house and people come around and you're like,
I mean, look at
here's my Laphroaig 28. Look at the nice box.
Look at that presentation box right there. That is just an insane presentation box. I mean,
Yeah.
like, look at that. Even the 28 in the front is actually copper inlay.
Oh, wow.
That's a copper inlay.
Huh.
Yeah, so that 28 there is a copper inlaid to the wood. I mean, like, you don't just machine make this. Someone along the line had to handle this by hand and put something in there, right? I mean, not to say one is better than the other, although I do prefer the 28 because I'm not a huge fan of Laphroaig 10.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
I guess for me, it's about time and place. Like, Laphroaig is that whiskey that's so distinctive that it's one of those whiskies that I would put in a cocktail, because a cocktail with Laphroaig and a cocktail with, I don't know, even just your basic Johnny Walker are going to be quite different, because that punchy flavour is going to cut through a little bit more.
100%.
And so it's more versatile for those things. You can sip it, but you could also put it on ice, and that's probably what they're marketing it as. Yeah, whereas this
one here, you drink it neat. I mean, if you put ice in it, you would just kill it.
Yeah.
And so I think that you would buy a bottle like this if you really, really appreciated old Islay. And not everyone will, because like we said, the peat's gone. The peat's almost gone.
So even the peat-heads and all the smoke people might not even like the old rare smoky whiskey.
They won't. We actually had a peat night where we featured this.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, just bizarre.
Yeah.
Because it didn't taste like peat at all, and everyone was there for peat.
And they're like, what's this?
Yeah. And they were like, where's the peat? But,
Probably the reason I like this, I mean, obviously they're different. For me, it's a different time and place. But what I like this is because it's interesting. It's now taught me about what old peaty whiskey does. And I think it's true. What people have said about old peaty whiskey losing its peatiness over time, it seems to be exactly the case.
That's right. What I do like about the Laphroaig 10, even though it's 40%, it is good value when you really look at it. It's a good whiskey. Globally, you can go anywhere and you know it's going to be a good whiskey. Yeah. It's a good quality whiskey. And when you sip it, like we just did, the flavor progresses, which is a good indication that it's a good whiskey. Blended whiskeys don't generally do that.
No.
And single malt, even though they're 40%, they're kind of almost like, I mean, I just imagine they're putting layers on my palate. And every time I sip, I got another layer, another layer, and then I'm getting something different every sip. And I'm getting that now. So that's a testament to the quality of Laphroaig.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though 40% is a piss take, but hey.
Oh, that's been all really interesting. Thanks again for hopping on, Henwood. This has been awesome. If you haven't checked out his channel, make sure you check it out. Eat, Smoke, Drink. He's also on Instagram. And thanks for bringing along the whiskey.
Pleasure.
And above all, make sure you share and enjoy. Cheers.